Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. I'd like to show you another brilliant and brutal attacking game from the FIDE Grand Prix tournament in Berlin. So this is from the group stage and features Levon Aronian playing white, and black is Andrey Esipenko from Russia. Aronian started the tournament superbly with 2 wins, beat Nakamura in the first round, and this was the second round game. But later on, well, as we know, his tournament crumbled and he didn't quite make it through. But let's have a look at this game because it really is something very special. So knight c3 and bishop b4, so it's a Ragozin. But now the game transposes into a Nimzo-Indian. So, here one can play queen a4 check, bishop g5, pawn takes pawn, but Aronian just plays it very mildly with e3, and after castles, this is basically a Nimzo-Indian. If white plays, for example, bishop d3, c5, this is main line. But Aronian plays bishop d2, and it looks like a very modest move. I mean, in the past, this was never really rated as a serious try for white, but, well, over the past few years, it's been played in a few notable games with some successes for white. Esipenko plays b6. Okay, looks very reasonable. This piece needs to develop. It's kind of the problem piece in these d4, d5 openings. Needs to come out because it's blocked by this pawn. So heads for the long diagonal. Very reasonable. Aronian exchanges on d5. Now that means that you can argue that b6 has created a slight weakness, because now black can't just sit there with the pawn on c6 because that pawn isn't guarded by another pawn. This is the whole point. And when the bishop reaches b7, then diagonal is blocked. Bishop d3. Bishop b7 anyway, because very often black wants to play c5 and the bishop supports this pawn. And here the normal moves are either castles or rook c1. In fact, I'm pretty sure I recorded a game for the channel in 2019 in the Isle of Man, the FIDE Grand Prix tournament, or not the FIDE Swiss, Grand Swiss tournament in the Isle of Man in 2019, I think it was, where Yevgeny Nair defeated Anand. I'm pretty sure I recorded it for the channel. Anyway, Nair against Anand, and Nair won a beautiful game against Anand. And basically, he played with knight e5, castles kingside, rook c1, and he played with f4 and got that classic Pillsbury attack with this pawn triad here. But Aronian goes in a different way. He played queen c2. This is a little bit unusual in this particular system, because here black has the opportunity to play c5 and potentially c4 to push that bishop off the diagonal. With the queen on c2, of course, there's no retreat. Bishop can't go back to c2. But this opens up other possibilities. There is now a little bit of pressure here. I mean, who knows? It might even be possible to castle queenside in some positions. So it's a little bit unusual. I mean, I think c5 should be played anyway, but it's tricky. Esipenko goes for rook e8, which is kind of the standard move against rook c1 and castles. You put the bishop back on f8 and then go for a quick c5. Aronian pushes the bishop back, and, well, Esipenko goes for bishop f8. One could take here, perhaps, and knight e4. That's possible. Or perhaps taking here and bishop a6 to exchange off this dangerous bishop. That's possible. Anyway, Esipenko kind of follows familiar paths and plays the bishop back to f8. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment here. And how do you play with white here? White to play. What do you think Aronian played next? Maybe you've seen this game already, but anyway, a little refresher if you haven't. Or even if you have, rather. I'm getting confused. I'll have a slurp of tea. That's going to help me. So how did Aronian play here? Well, you could say the standard moves are either castles or knight e5, this strategy I mentioned earlier, to play f4. But after knight e5, then, black plays c5, and then knight c6, and, you get pressure on d4. This is the problem. This undermines the knight. Aronian played an incredibly direct move. Knight g5. This is kind of schoolboy stuff, with a schoolboy threat of bishop takes pawn check. And indeed, if h6, check, and that's mate. So because of that, Esipenko played g6, blocking the diagonal. Okay, what now? The game's afoot. Follow your spirit. And upon the charge, cry God for Harry! h4. There we go. Harry, the h-pawn, rolls into town. It's very crude, but highly effective. Black is struggling already. I mean, if this pawn advances, then of course g6 is just going to be destroyed. So Esipenko kind of understandably played c5 here. Yeah, and if bishop g7, well, just castles queenside, and then h5, and you just get on with it basically. Knight takes, and knight takes h7, and white is just crashing through here. So Esipenko understandably sought counterplay in the middle with c5, but it wasn't even necessary to castle queenside. Simply h5. Aronian just carried on. And if this didn't happen, but if c takes d4, h takes g6, and bishop takes g6. And, the fact that white has sort of lost a pawn in the middle, it makes no odds whatsoever. I mean, it's basically just, mate in a couple. Either way, black is just collapsing. So after h5, Esipenko played h6. And then h takes g6. H takes g5. G takes f7 check. So what's the score now? So Aronian is a piece down. However, bishop g6 is rather unpleasant. And here, well, if king g7, then just queen f5, and white is in time just to take the g-pawn and gets through to the king. The knight can't move because of queen f7. So yeah, queen f5 is just a killer. It's just in time because it feels as though white actually doesn't have too many pieces attacking, but it's enough. So anyway, bishop g6 check, king e7. And again, queen f5 is incredibly strong. Bishop g7. And now, well, white needs another piece in the attack. If black can get his pieces out here, then, well, he's got two. Well, hang on, what's the score? Yeah, white is a piece down. Of course, white can take here, but you don't really want to exchange off that bishop. That would sort of ease the pressure. But Aronian's next move is just fantastic. e4. Brilliant. Opening up this diagonal so the bishop can play its part if necessary. If pawn takes e4, bishop g5, knight here, castles queenside. There we go. It was worth hanging back with the king in the middle. And there really is no good defense here. I mean, here it's quite absolutely clear because every single one of white's pieces can be included in the attack. So knight c6 played, just trying to bring some pieces out. Now bishop takes rook is good. If king takes, then bishop takes here, check. Now a nice move, rook h7. That's going to be winning. So in the game, after bishop takes, queen takes, knight d5 check. If king f7, then knight takes, followed by rook h7. So knight d5 check just played, knight takes d5, bishop takes g5 check, king d6, the king is staggering across the board, and now after the next move, Esipenko resigned, rook h7, just slicing through the 7th rank towards the king. And here Esipenko resigned. I mean, there really is no defense. Let's try a couple of moves. What about queen g6? Attacks the rook, defends the bishop. But now bishop f4 check. Just cuts the king down. It's too late. If the king goes back, then we've got queen g8, followed by taking here, for example. Let's go back here. Rook h7, knight e7, bishop f4 check again. Queen d6 threatens mate on c7. And, well, simple move, rook takes g7, and that's the end of that. So that was the final position after rook h7. Wow, what an absolutely brutal attack. Let me just go back to a couple of critical positions. So queen c2, slightly unusual, but and Esipenko stuck to the tried and tested routine. This works against rook c1 and castles. But here, knight g5. What a crude attacking move. And yeah, good old Harry entered the scene to crack open the h-file. Fantastic play. Yeah, pity that Aronian didn't make it through. But I'm also pleased that Nakamura made it through to the candidates as well. Not everyone can qualify. Thanks for watching.